Today's lesson is 12.1b, multiplying with radicals, specifically square root. Now the key to multiplying is we take the outside parts times each other and the inside parts times each other, and then we look to simplify. And what that means is when we look down here for our first example, simplify 3 times the square root of 7 times 4 square root of 2. 3 and 4 are outside of the square roots. They're in front. So 3 times 4 would give us 12, right? And those would go in front. The square roots, we got 7 and 2 would multiply. So the square root of 7, square root of 2 would be square root of 7 times 2. And then when we simplify here, we're going to get 12 times square root of 14. 3 times 4 is 12. 7 times 2 is 14. And then 14 is 7 times 2, so we can't simplify any further because that was this step, looking to simplify. So our answer is 12 square root of 14. This next one will be an example of where we can simplify. So we've got 5 times 2 on the outside, 6 times 3 on the inside. 5 times 2 is 10, 6 times 3 is 18. Now 18 is 6 times 3, 6 is 2 times 3, and then we do our canceling, right? We look to see, do we have pairs? I got 1 3 here, 1 3 here. So we've got a pair of 3, so one of those is going to come out. Usually I just kind of do an arrow through one of them. So one of those is coming out. And then what's left over? We've got the 10 is still on the outside. 1 3 now joined it on the outside for multiplying, and the leftover 2 is still out there. So since the 2 is still left over, right, we didn't have a pair, it goes back underneath. And now we got 10 times 3, square root of 2, and 10 times 3 is 30. So 30 square root of 2 would be our final answer. And that's what they mean by simplifying. This would technically be an answer that usually I'd give either minus half or minus 1, depending on how many points it's worth, if this was your final answer. Because clearly we simplified, and now this is a more simplified correct answer. Next, we've got 4 square root of 3 times 5 root 2. Well, what's 4 times 5? 20. What's 3 times 2? 6. So we got 20 square root of 6. Well, 6 is 2 times 3, and we're done, so there's no pairs, so this would be our final answer. Now, after you do this for a while, it won't be as much of a check. You'll recognize numbers like, say, 8, 12, 16, 20, and so on that can simplify, and you'll just know. And then you'll see some other numbers like, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 11, 30, 15 that won't simplify. And you'll just start to learn those. So as it goes, you'll start to see, oh, 18, yeah, we can simplify. Or, oh, 10, we can't simplify. Now, I will go through that each time, but be aware that the more you do this, the more you recognize that, oh, square root of 6 isn't going to simplify anymore. It's done. Moving on. 6 times 3 on the outside. 6 times 3 is 18. On the inside, 2 times 8, 16. So we got 18 square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So we don't need to do a tree. If you did a tree, you would get 2 sets of 2s, right? 2 pairs of 2. So 18 times 4, 72 is our answer. Now this is a note that still remember your perfect squares. If you need a little bit of a list, right? 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and so on. I believe those notes are still on Moodle, probably from like chapter 8 or 9 when we went over these in more in-depth. So if you still need a hint on which ones are perfect squares, feel free to look back at that. Next, 7 times 2, 14. 2 times 6, 12. So I got 14 root 12. Now, if you need to write out the steps to get 14, 7 times 2, square root 2 times 6, feel free to do that. I usually show it for a couple problems, but as you get going, 2 times 6 isn't something I typically need to write an extra step for. Same thing with 7 times 2. Okay. I usually take this, draw the arrows to tell me what's multiplying, and then we're done. So if you feel like this will benefit you, don't forget that step. If you feel like it's going to be a waste of your time, you can go ahead, go right to here. But beware, if you run into problems where you copy the problem down wrong, or you do a multiplication error like 3 times 2 is 9, right? It's harder to see where your error is if you don't show your work. Okay. Next, 12 is 3 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. So I've got a pair of 2's here. One of them is going to come out. So we've got one of these 2's comes out. And so now we're going to have 14s on the outside already. So now we got 14 and a 2 comes out. Usually I write it right around there. So we've got 14, 2. The 3 is still left over. It's underneath. 14 times 2 is 28. So 28 root 3 is our final answer there. Next, 3 root 3 times 4 root 12. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 12 is 36. Square root of 36 is 6. 6 dozen is 72 again. Okay, so some of these, and it's not a terrible amount of work, most of these you would need a tree just to simplify. On this slide, try it on your own to work out the answer ahead of time. So pause the video, work it out, and check your answer. In my answers for the first one, we got 12 root 48, which simplified to 48 root 3. And we had 10 root 64, which simplified to be 80. Now here's the work if you didn't get it right. 3 times 4 is 12. 8 times 6, 48. 48 is 6 times 8. I just separate it into those numbers. 6 is 2 times 3. 8 is 2 times 4. And 4 is 2 times 2. Circling up my 2's, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 2. So I'm going to have 2 of these come out. So we'll have a 2 come out here. A 2 comes out here. And 1 3 is left over. Usually I box or underline it. So now I have 2 2's that came out, square root of 3, and 12 was already out there. So 12 times 2, 24, 24 times 2, 48, square root of 3. Over here, 5 times 2 is 10, 2 times 32 is 64, square root of 64 is 8, 10 times 8 is 80. And that wraps up today's lesson. Feel free to ask any question by email or Google Chat. Thank you.